So, a very good morning to the students of class 11 and also the revising students of class 12. Today we are going to take up the poem John Brown, written by Bob Dylan. And this is the photograph of Bob Dylan on your screen. You can see that he is singing. This is one of the shows aired on MTV, MTV Unplugged, and you can see him singing and playing on the guitar. And he is singing. Obviously, he is singing one of his own songs, which he must have composed, and he must have he must have sung and he must have added music to it. So MTV Unplugged original release. So this is the poster, and here you see Bob Dylan, who has also won the Nobel Prize in Literature for his exceptional lyrical songs, which are actually so very meaningful and also are examples of excellent American poetry. So let's read about Bob Dylan first before we begin with the text of the poem. So here, taken from your workbook, you can see John Brown is chapter 6 or poem number 6. Bob Dylan, who was born in 1941. He's an American songwriter, singer and poet, born on 24th of May 1941. He was born Robert Allen Zimmerman. He began performing folk and country songs, taking the name of Bob Dylan. At the same time, he also attended the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis. So in 1961, Dylan signed his first recording contract and emerged as one of the influential voices in the history of American popular music. In 1963, he released the Freewheelin', which marked his voice as one of the most original and poetic voices. This is the album that included two of the most memorable 1960s folk songs, Blowin' in the Wind and A Hard Rain's a Gonna Fall. His next album, The Times They Are A-Changin', firmly established Dylan as the definitive songwriter of the 60s protest movement. Much of his famous work dated from the 1960s, they chronicled social unrest. So now there are so many other things told about him in this part of the introduction, which you can read from the workbook. And now let's move on to his awards. The legendary singer-songwriter has received 11 Grammy Awards, a Golden Globe Award, an Academy Award, as well as the Presidential Medal of Freedom. In 2016, he received the Nobel Prize in Literature for having created new poetic expressions within the great American song tradition. So now, talking about this particular poem, which is not really a poem but a song which Bob Dylan composed, added music and sang, and is a very popular song. In this poem, John Brown, what Bob Dylan tries to bring out is that war is futile. War really does not serve any purpose. So John Brown is an anti-war song that Dylan wrote in 1962. It tells the story of a young man whose name is John Brown, who proudly marched off to war expecting to find glory and win medals, but returned many months later, all shot up, with a disfigured face, and was barely able to talk. He told his mother of his horrible experience on the battlefield and how he felt like a puppet in a play. The song ends with the young man dropping his medals into his mother's hand. So this is the introduction of the poem as well as the poet. And here we have critical remarks taken also from your workbook. The title of the poem, John Brown is the hero of Bob Dylan's John Brown. The title of the poem is direct and simple. The poem begins with John Brown going off to fight in a war and ends with him parting with his medals won in the same war. So you can go through the title from the workbook And the vain glory in war is also highlighted in this poem. So you can just go through these portions, which I'm now showing you on the screen from your workbook. And see the universality of the poem, that is also very important. The poem has, or rather, this song has, we should better call it the song of Bob Dylan rather than the poem of Bob Dylan. This poem has kind of universal appeal because it applies to any soldier in any country, because warfare is something which affects almost all the nations of the world, uh, uh, every now and then. So naturally, there are soldiers who are ordered to go and ordered to fight, and in the process, sometimes they die and sometimes they become crippled, just like John Brown in this particular song. So now let's move on to the text of the poem. First, let me read the text once and then we will go line by line. It's a very simple text. So, John Brown, written by Bob Dylan. John Brown went off to war to fight on a foreign shore. His mama sure was proud of him. He stood straight and tall in his uniform and all. His mama's face broke out all in a grin. Oh, son, you look so fine. I'm glad you're a son of mine. You make me proud to know you hold a gun. Do what the captain says. Lots of medals you will get. And we'll put them on the wall when you come home. As that old train pulled out, John's ma began to shout, telling everyone in the neighborhood, that's my son that's about to go. He's a soldier now, you know. She made well sure her neighbors understood. She got a letter once in a while, and her face broke into a smile as she showed them to the people from next door. And she bragged about her son with his uniform and gun, and these things you called a good old fashioned war. Then the letters ceased to come. For a long time they did not come. They ceased to come for about 10 months or more. Then a letter finally came saying, go down and meet the train. Your sons are coming home from the war. She smiled and went right down. She looked everywhere around, but she could not see her soldier son in sight. But as all the people passed, she saw her son at last. When she did, she could hardly believe her eyes. On his face, oh, his face was all shot up, and his hand was all blown off. And he wore a metal brace around his waist. He whispered kind of slow in a voice she did not know, while she couldn't even recognize his face. Oh Lord, not even recognize his face. Oh, tell me, my darling son, pray tell me what they done. How is it you come to be this way? He tried his best to talk, but his mouth could hardly move, and the mother had to turn her face away. Don't you remember, Ma, when I went off to war? You thought it was the best thing I could do. I was on the battleground, you were home acting proud. You wasn't there standing in my shoes. And oh, and I thought when I was there, God, what am I doing here? I'm a trying to kill somebody or die trying. But the thing that scared me most was when my enemy came close and I saw that his face looked just like mine. And I couldn't help but think, through the thunder rolling and stink, that I was just a puppet in a play. And through the roar and smoke, this string is finally broke, and a cannonball blew my eyes away. As he turned away to walk, his ma was still in shock at seeing the metal brace that helped him stand. But as he turned to go, he called his mother close, and he dropped his medals down into her hand. So, very simple language and very lucid style in which Bob Dylan has composed this song. Let us try to go over it once again, this time at a slower pace, and let's try to understand the meanings of the different lines. So here we are, coming to the beginning of this song written by Bob Dylan. John Brown went off to war to fight on a foreign shore. So John Brown, he's our protagonist. He went off to fight in a war. The war was in progress. He had joined the army. He was a soldier, and he was deployed along with the rest of the troops in some foreign country. In some foreign country away from where he lived. His mama, means his mother, sure was proud of him. She was very proud that her son was a soldier and in uniform and carrying a gun and was going to war. So all that seems very gallant, seems very heroic, no doubt. He stood straight and tall in his uniform and all. His mama's face broke out all in a grin. She was smiling. In fact, she was showing her teeth and smiling. She was so happy that her son was a soldier. Oh, son, you look so fine. I'm glad you are a son of mine. Oh, son, you look so great in this uniform, your outfit, and all the necessary gear which a soldier carries. So you're looking great. And I am very glad, I'm in fact very happy that you are a son of mine. Maybe she had other sons, and this son in particular, that is John Brown, was making his mother proud, and that's what she was saying. You make me proud to know you hold a gun. So it makes me very proud to know that you also hold a gun. Now, because he's a soldier, so he has to use the gun and he has to fight in the war. But that is something, the mere fact that her son holds a gun in his hand makes the mother proud. Do what the captain says. Lots of medals you will get. So please follow whatever your commander tells you. Captain is the commander of the soldiers. So do as the captain says, and I'm sure because of your bravery and because of your performance, you will win many medals. And we'll put them on the wall when you come home. And after the war gets over, when your job is finished, when you return home with those medals, we will put them up on the wall. So that people, when they come to our house, they'll be able to see. Proudly will we display the medals on the wall of our living room. As that old train pulled out, John's ma began to shout. Now all the soldiers had boarded a train, and this train was taking them to the port from where they would set sail and probably go to another country where they'll be fighting. So, as the train started leaving the station, John Brown's mother was shouting in joy, telling everyone in the neighborhood, "That's my son. That's about to go. He's a soldier now, you know. So that's my son. He's going in that train with the rest of the soldiers because he's also a soldier now." So she made well sure her neighbors understood. She made sure that all her neighbors understood that her son was a soldier. She got a letter once in a while. Now, after the son is gone, once in a while she got a letter from her son. And her face broke into a smile. Whenever she got a letter, son wrote a letter, she smiled, she was happy. As she showed them to the people from next door. Now, she used to show off the letter to people, her neighbors, next door people. Look, I got a letter from my son from a foreign country. He's there, he's fighting, and he's writing to me and telling me, describing how he's fighting. And she bragged about her son with his uniform and gun. So she went on to tell stories. Some of those stories were not really true, but she made them up. He was wearing his uniform and he was carrying his gun, and then he saw the enemy and then he fired and he killed so many of the enemy soldiers, enemy troops. So this is the way she went on bragging. And these things you called a good old-fashioned war. So, this was the way war generally happens. Then the letters ceased to come. Then a time came when the letters from her son stopped coming. For a long time they did not come. They ceased to come for about 10 months or more. So there is nothing to explain. You can understand. It's very simple English. Then a letter finally came. And in that letter it was written. It was not from her son. Somebody else has written that letter. Somebody else, maybe officially sent from her son's commanding unit office, that go down and meet the train. Your sons are coming home from the war. Go down, go to the station and watch the train arrive because your son is coming home. He is coming home from war. So mother was very proud and she was, proudly going to the railway station to receive her son. She smiled and went right down. She looked everywhere around. So when she reached the station on the particular day, when the train was supposed to arrive at that particular time, the train had arrived and all the soldiers who had traveled in that train were getting down and leaving for their homes. She could not see her son. She looked around everywhere but could not see her soldier son in sight. But as all the people passed, so she waited and waited till the crowd became thinner. Almost all the people were gone from the platform. And then she saw her son. She saw her son at last. When she did, she could hardly believe her eyes. Now it came as a great shock to her. She could not believe her eyes. Oh, his face was all shot up. Meaning to say, his face was badly injured. There were marks of injury all over his face. And his hand was all blown off. And he did not have hands. Or rather, maybe one hand. So one hand was gone. His face was badly disfigured. And he wore a metal brace around his waist. That means his pelvic bone was fractured in the war and maybe damaged. Also, he had sustained damage in his vertebral column, and because of that, now a metal brace was put around his waist so as to keep him standing or keep him straight. Otherwise, he would collapse. He whispered, kind of slow, in a voice she did not know. Now, he was in great pain and he was not in a condition to speak out loud like he used to do before he went to war. And for her, it was very strange because she did not ever hear her son speak like that, while she couldn't even recognize his face. So voice was different and even the face looked different because the face had become so badly disfigured that she could hardly recognize him. Oh Lord, not even recognize his face. So that is the refrain of the song. In the text of the poem which you have in your textbook, you may not have this repetition. So then next stanza, oh tell me my darling son, pray tell me what they'd done. Oh, tell me. Now mother is desperate to know why is it that he is looking so badly injured and disfigured. What had actually happened? So she wants to know everything. How is it you come to be this way? How is it that all this happened to you? Why do you look like this? He tried his best to talk, but his mouth could hardly move. Now he was in great pain, plus his face was disfigured, his mouth was also not able to move properly, he could not speak properly, he tried to, but he could hardly ever say anything. And the mother had to turn her face away. So when he struggled to speak, it was a pathetic situation for the mother who had given birth to this son who was now so badly injured and so badly disfigured that she could not bear the sight of his struggle trying to utter a word, and she moved her face away. And then the son finally spoke. Don't you remember, Ma? When I went off to war, you thought it was the best thing I could do. You don't remember that? Have you forgotten, mother? When I went to the war, you thought that that was the best thing I could ever do. I was on the battleground. You were home, acting proud. You wasn't there, standing in my shoes. I was fighting. You were not fighting. You were not there where I was. I was fighting this war and I was facing the consequences of the war, which you did not have to face, Ma. So you were at home. You were just acting proud, telling people that I have gone to war. What a great thing for me to have done. You wasn't there standing in my shoes. You were not in my position, standing in my shoes. You were not in my position. So what would you know what I was going through? Oh, and I thought when I was there, God, what am I doing here? And on the other hand, when I was fighting in that war, when I was in the front and I was facing the enemy, at that moment I was wondering, Mother, what am I doing here? I am trying to kill somebody or die trying. So that is what I was doing. Either I had to kill somebody or I had to be dead myself. But the thing that scared me most was when my enemy came close. So I was scared the most when I saw the enemy approaching. My enemy came close and I saw that his face looked just like mine. And I couldn't help but think through the thunder rolling and stink. What is the thunder rolling here? The booming sound of the cannons, and the stink here refers to gunpowder, the smell of burning fire and gunpowder as the cannon fired. So that is what he's referring to. And I couldn't help but think through the thunder rolling and stink that I was just a puppet in a play. That is what exactly the soldiers are. The supreme leaders, they order and wars take place, but nothing happens to the leaders on top. People who die are the common soldiers who have to fight because they have been ordered to fight. And that is what makes them puppets in the hands of the politicians, the diplomats, and the leaders of different countries. And through the roar and smoke, this string is finally broke, and a cannonball blew my eyes away. So while I was fighting in this war, finally this string was broken. This continuous method of fighting and killing the enemy finally came to an end for me when a cannonball hit me and my eyes were blown away. That's how my face got disfigured, because the explosion left my face completely disfigured. As he turned away to walk, his ma was still in shock at seeing the metal brace that helped him stand. But as he turned to go, he called his mother close. But as he turned to go, what did he do? He wanted to teach his mother the lesson of her life, to make her realize what a big mistake she had done in sending her son to war and in having felt proud that her son was a soldier. So, you wanted the medals, Ma. That's what you were telling me before I left, that you should listen to the captain and then you will win medals, and then we'll hang up those medals in the room and people will come and see and admire. So it will be a proud moment for us. So now here are the medals for you. So and he dropped his medals down into her hand. So this was the ultimate lesson that he taught his mother when he dropped the medals down into her hand. So realization strikes the mother. She realizes that she had made a mistake, but now it was already too late. She couldn't possibly do anything about it. Her son was permanently crippled because of this war. So that's Bob Dylan, and you have just gone through his poem, or rather his song, John Brown. And I'm sure all of you have understood whatever I have explained. The language is very simple. There is hardly anything difficult in this lyrical song written by Bob Dylan, and I'm sure all of you have understood. So that's it. Now I want you all to read whatever is given in the workbook. Please go through each and every page on this poem that you find in the workbook, and please revise by reading those pages and also going through this video when you feel like. So thank you very much.